Good afternoon, and today's talk will be on science fiction film. Now, science fiction film is a very popular genre of film studies, and it is popular on the part of those who are the film critics, those who are the film theorists from their angle also, and on the other hand, those who are the audience. And we find that a major portion of the audience, they really love, they enjoy science fiction films. And the journey of science fiction film, however, it was started so many days back, early 19th century, uh, or I think it will be more appropriate to say if we call it around 1902. That means early 20th century. From then on, this particular genre is found to grow up rapidly because of the popularity, because of the love for this specific film genre, and the different group of audience, they do have their own kind of preferences for this specific film genre that we call science fiction, and often popularly said sci-fi in short. So science fiction, I was talking of that very early film as recorded today, the 1902 film, and the name of the film was A Trip to the Moon. So, A Trip to the Moon, the science fiction film that is categorized as the first early science fiction film today, as it is recorded. Until then, there is a series of films across the globe. Directors, filmmakers, they have attempted making films on the science fiction issues, and continuously there is a rapid development and a new way of approach that we face, that we encounter, that we observe in this particular genre. So the early film, A Trip to the Moon, necessarily it created an atmosphere that was artificial, that was in a very nascent stage. And in that nascent stage of making films on science fiction issues, directors had to struggle a lot so that the whole scenario, the whole platform may appear to the audience very natural, but it was very difficult for them to create an environment of trip to the moon, even when they are doing everything here. And at that very time, the whole setup, the technological support was not very sound. In spite of having so many struggles, so many technical issues of the time, A Trip to the Moon was a kind of a very good initiative, and it popularized, it encouraged so many other filmmakers to make films on this particular genre called science fiction film. And the result is that we can see today numerous films are being made since then, even today, continuously across the globe, not only in English, but in a country like India. We also find here numerous science fiction films are being made with new thoughts, new dimensions, and new approaches. Now, before going to that very issue of science fiction film in detail, I think we should at least now will make an attempt to define the periphery of science fiction film. Now, when you talk of science fiction film, science fiction movie, we necessarily talks of presence of science and technology. And it is not merely having science and technology Rather, in science fiction movies, we generally see there is also a kind of an internal struggle between science and technology. Science and technology often are found to struggle with each other. Its impact on the society, social and the cultural aspects, human nature, these are some of the very crude psychological, technological issues on the basis of which science fiction films, movies are primarily uh, based upon. Now, science fiction movies often talks a lot about futuristic ideas because they are often with a specific message. What is there ahead of us? What is going to be the future of science fiction? What is going to be the future of uh, you know spacecraft, space mission, and all those things? What are the new approaches? What are the new thoughts and dimensions in the case of discovering new planet and the people around there, the aliens? These are some of the very curious topics on which we find that science fiction movies are basically made. Those are made enkindling a kind of an interest in the mind of the audience, because audience has a very common tendency to know what is unknown to all of us, and they often go to the movie keeping in mind that director might give them a new food for thought, a new kind of uh, you know spirit that they are really waiting for. So every science fiction movie is basically very challenging in nature, because the director has to deal something on which no one knows very clearly. It is a vague, approach with which the science fiction director often attempts to. When the knowledge is, in one hand, vast and limited, in both way it is true. So it is that very challenging part on the performance of the director, how far he can go with the power of imagination so that he can take a new track, leading the audience and also at the same time fulfilling the basic demands of entertainment, message, enjoyment, enkindling curiosity, and intellectual support that the audience would like to have before going to the particular cinema, particular movie. So, science fiction film as a genre, first of all, talks about the conflict, because there must be a conflict. When there is no conflict, there is no progression. When you attempt to grow more, you must be facing some hurdles in front of you. If you don't find any hurdle, if you don't find any kind of difficulties, that means that you are not you are not passing through a phase made by yourself, rather it is made by someone else. So it's a conflict, and the conflict is necessary for the tension, for the anxiety, for the curiosity in that narrative of the film. Human nature that we have already mentioned. human nature has some limitations, and at the same time, it is a kind of a space that is unrestricted. We can have hardly any choice to think what a human body can possess ultimately. This part of possession, the part of human nature, is limitless and it is beyond any imagination. So, from that part too, from that part of human nature, science fiction has enormous possibilities and challenges at the same time. It talks about futuristic and fantastical world. Fantastical that we cannot even think of right at the moment. It is fantastic because it tries to go deeper to a particular area or platform that no one can imagine, that no one can think of, that no one can immediately reach in spite of having the power of imagination. It is an unbelievable or a make-believable space. It is such a kind of a platform that cannot be felt, judged with the part of our rational mind. In the world of fantasy fiction, fantastical works, there is always a clash with the rational mind. Rational mind hardly can accept the fantastical image placed over there. So, a cinema, a film tries to unfurl all these areas when it is particularly science fiction movies. Now, if we go deeper to this discussion of science fiction film, we have to mention one science fiction scriptwriter. He is Eric Williams. Now, Eric Williams is of the opinion that the science fiction genre is one of the most popular of the 11 genres of filmmaking. And this genre is so promising, this genre is so full of possibilities that with the part of science fiction, any genre can be explained very clearly, very meaningfully, and very practically. So, science fiction genre has its own niche. This genre has its own identity, and this genre is, in that sense, very popular and a super genre, as he would like to mention. Along with science fiction, it has other like-minded genre which are also very popular, and those are action, those are crime, those are fantasy, those are horror, romance, sports, thriller, war, and so many. So those are often found to get intertwined, attached to this particular science fiction genre. Or there is always a mix and match condition. How to define science fiction film? We must take help from the definition made by Vivian Shobe. Now, Vivian Shobe is an American film theorist and critic, and he has a very specific definition regarding science fiction film. Science fiction film genre, it is a film genre that emphasizes actual, extrapolative, or 2.0 speculative science and empirical method, interacting in a social context with the lesser emphasized but still present transcendentalism of magic and religion in an attempt to reconcile man with the unknown. In this brief definition, Vivian has attempted to touch almost all the issues of science fiction film. It is speculative in nature. You just imagine, as a film audience or as a critic, you can only speculate it might happen, or there are certain possibilities of getting into it as the narrative of the text, film text, is moving in that particular way. But it is highly speculative. It talks a lot about some of those issues that you can only assume, but you cannot reach to the final point, reaching point of your power of speculation in no part in that way. Now, science fiction film genre is also empirically tuned. Often it is directly the knowledge, in some cases, taken from experiences. You have certain experiences of that particular section, and the rest you assume, you speculate, you think, but you can never come to a conclusion because there is no definite conclusion for this particular film genre. Another very important thing that Vivian has pointed out is it requires a social context. Science fiction films are in no way beyond the human world, beyond the daily affairs. Science fiction film is actually connected to human and cultural life, social and cultural life. So when we talk of social and cultural life, so we need to think of the impact of science on society. How do people react? How do people communicate? Are they accepting such kind of an event that is taking place or not? So science fiction film should not be beyond the social and the cultural life. It will be connected to or grafted inside the society. Social behavior must be a part of it. At the same time, magic and religion must be there, and this magic world, a world that cannot be explained, or even science is not possible to explain that particular world. So the magic world is very much a part of the science fiction film genre. What about religion? They have taken into the reference of religion because so long human life is, so long the concept of religion must be there. It is not something that is devoid of religion, Because religion and science may go hand in hand, or they can have a kind of a contrast. They can have a kind of a tussle. But some of the opinions proposed by science can be tackled, handled by religion too. Religion has also a very good contribution in this part of science and scientific approaches. So, this definition of Vivian can be taken more or less substantial, because it attempts to most of the part of our discussion. I would like to mention one text today. This one is came up in the year 1910, the first science fiction film in 1902 by George Millay, and then in time. I have mentioned Frankenstein in this small talk only because many of us are familiar with the text Frankenstein, actually written by Mary Shelley as a fiction. Now, Mary Shelley's approach, that scientific approach about human mind, brain, and also making a kind of a machine just like the human being. But machine has its horrific, horrible consequences. Machine is not always is something that can be helpful or of much use. So in one way, Frankenstein should be considered as a science fiction film. On the other hand, it is a horror film as well. And I would like to refer at this context that this Frankenstein narrative is so popular even today that in Indian context, so many films are being made keeping in mind of that laboratory-based creation of artificial intelligence. When such artificial intelligence is created, or such kind of a human being is created artificially, it often has a very adverse impact on the society. We have a few South Indian science fiction films by Rajnikant, Robot and others. Those science fiction films always in a kind of a question that machine-made life is good, but it is not too good. It has a very serious negative impact on the society. Now, more advanced, artificially intellectual machines are being created, and they are made in such a way that they can talk with you, they can feel with you. But the ultimate result is in most cases shown that it is in no way that much perfect and good. Another film that is in my mind right now is by Charlie Chaplin, And the name of the film is Modern Times, that talks a lot about some of the futuristic machine. In the film Modern Times, we can see that to minimize the time of tiffin break in a particular office, that Chaplin has wanted to highlight this is the modern time because everything is machine oriented. So how to improve the product? What to do to improve the product? The laborers, they have to spend less time in taking breaks, taking tiffin. Why not to bring a machine? And if one is seated in a particular space in the machine will come up, and the laborer has not to even use the hand. The particular bowel will come to the mouth, and the food over there, that will be thrown to the mouth immediately. If it is a soup, a spoon will come up automatically and it will pour the liquid in the mouth with the help of the spoon. Since it is a liquid, and if any uneasy feeling is there on the part of the person in the film, it was Chaplin who played the role of that victim. So there will be a kind of a duster-like part that will come in front and that will mop the face immediately. This is how the whole scenario was actually made. What's the result? Result is shown in that particular scene in the movie, The Modern Times. Now there was a short circuit. Since there was a short circuit and it was the whole setup was actually disturbed. Since the whole setup was disturbed, so the liquid, the soup was not poured in the mouth, rather it fell on the dress. And that particular mopping machine that was supposed to mop the face, the mouth, clean the mouth, instead of that, when the whole machine was disordered, it started behaving abnormally. It started putting some heavy thrashes on the mouth, on the face of the person, and the person, the role of was actually played by Charlie Chaplin. He could feel what a terrible, horrible experience it was. The machine started almost killing the person. And with the help of the technicians over there, with lots of apologies from their part to the owner of the office, and the owner of the office declared this machine is in no way be approvable because there are some serious disturbances and it can be do some serious harm to the employees. So this is how in the science fiction films we find that, of course, there are new possibilities, going to some new space, discovering new land, new areas, aliens, reaching to a different planet, having contact with them. For example, the very popular Hindi film that we have, PK, the role played by Amir Khan. Amir Khan's PK, of course, is a very popular science fiction film in Indian context. There must be a separate class on science fiction film and Indian context. But I would like to mention only that science fiction films like PK, giving the hints that one day human being, the human scientist will be able to make a communication with some aliens who are staying in a different planet. Maybe they are more advanced than the people of the earth, but it is possible. So what was the message that PK actually gave at the end of the film? That PK actually could learn the art of lying from Earth. I do remember one very popular science fiction and award-winning film, Avatar. Avatar talks about some of the aliens also. How do they communicate? Even when they are dead, those who are dead. So the influence of the deads are never gone. Under the particular tree in the movie Avatar, it was shown over there that they can communicate to the present generation, the past generation and the present generation, they can communicate. So these films are full of possibilities. Why not Jurassic Park? Very popular films, and a few versions are also there. Jotting down all the sources of those dinosaurs and then ultimately making that concept, what exactly the dinosaurs looked like, and on the basis of which the film was made. How did they behave? And again, that Jurassic World's environment and the people, the scientists of our time, and this human interaction between the two, the film has attempted to discuss, negotiate the past and the present, the science and that humanity. So science fiction film at the end, I would like to say, at the end of today's talk, it has possibilities enormous. Science fiction film actually helps to think differently. It helps to imagine differently. It helps the audience think and rethink the kind of common world that we see every day. There may be something else that can create a new path, a new dimension of our thinking process and of our living. So that much I had to say today. And thank you so much for your patient listening.